Good morning, everyone. Jim Clark here at the Synchronicity Sanctuary in Central Virginia to share with you another contemplative focus. And the focus I want to go over today is how am I really feeling? So take a moment to ask yourself, do I feel generally positive, inspired, or excited about life? Or do I feel down, drained, or disconnected? Our goal is to bring our feelings into alignment with what lifts us up. When you feel fear, anger, or sadness, instead of pushing it away, acknowledge it. Then gently shift your focus toward love, joy, and compassion. Think thoughts that support your growth and let yourself feel them. This is emotional alignment. Let love flow in everything you do. So, we're really talking about our emotional dimension. It's very impactful for every human being, and for the most part, as we see in today's world full of anger and questions and negativity, most people seem to be really caught up in that, and they entertain it daily. I've known people who show up pretty much every time in my life. They got some issue that they're going over in a negative way. They're victims of their own creation. They made them feel the way they feel. This made me feel the way I feel it, on and on and on. So, as meditators, we can take control of our life. We can actually empower ourselves to embrace whatever creation we are creating and deal with it as we are creating it. There's no reason why we can't. We're not victims of it, we are the creators. So let's create something that serves us instead of brings us down. Our teacher, Master Charles, used to always tell us that love always begins with you. If you can't love yourself, how can you love anybody else? And yet, the world is full of people who claim they love some person, some partner in life with them, and yet they're very negative about everything they're experiencing within themselves. So they're demonstrating that they're not really in love. They would like to think they're in love. They embrace the illusion that they're in love in the hopes that that's what is happening. But it's not really happening. It's only happening if you make it happen. And the only way to make it happen is to meditate and bring balance into this human experience, because the human experience by default is going to be dominated by the negative polarity. We're in a polarized field of experience. The negative polarity, which allows us to contract into these human forms, is the dominant polarity by default. And if we don't consciously meditate, which brings balance, it's a balancing technique, into our lives and into our own being, then we are victims of whatever's going on, because we've created ourselves in that way. And we are generally feeling anxious or depressed or fearful and so forth and so on. But it's just one of those things where if you're not aware, then you're not aware and you're a victim. If you are aware, then you are the creator of your reality, and you can create it however you wish, no matter what the circumstances are. Now, there are stories, of course, and ancient records of very powerful beings who were masters of the human experience, and even if they were being, if their lives were going to be taken away from them, they were still joyous, and they were still celebrating the truth of who they were, which is nothing but joy. It's nothing but empowerment. It is source itself, because that's the bottom line of what everything is. There's nothing else but consciousness, because all of this creation is consciousness simply playing the game that it wants to play, which is the human experience. in our case. So it's pretending to be something that it's not, so that it can evolve and eventually discover itself again for the sake of itself, because when that happens, there is a huge burst of joy beyond description. And people are waking up all the time. You don't see it in the news because it's not in the news. It's too positive. News seems to live on negativity because that's where most people are. And if they were always positive, how many viewers would they get? So I myself subscribe to a newsletter that's called Fix the News, and it takes the positive side of news, and it has articles about all kinds of things that are going on that are very inspiring and very positive. And yet, I don't know, they're not a major outlet by any means, and you never hear them on most media on the internet. So that's a demonstration of where most people in the world are. But again, that has nothing to do with your own experience. If you spend your time watching negative stories on the news, for example, and then you get caught up in that and you start running stories based on that, then you're going to start bringing yourself down. You'll start to contract yourself more and more, and the fear and the negative emotions that come with that will be your experience. And then you can easily fall into victimhood, and then just keep running it because you're acting as if you don't have a choice. But if you're a meditator, which you probably are if you're watching this at all, then you do have a choice. And you have that choice every day to continually meditate every day, because that is the balancing techniques that empowers you to make such choices. You build the love for yourself that's always there. We are conscious beings, and nothing can change that, because that's truly who we are, even though we might act as if we're not, because in the beginning of our human experience, how many ever lifetimes that was, we had to evolve to a point where we could start taking control of our lives, in the sense that we would meditate and wake up to ourselves in ways that are positive and truthful. The truth of our own being, the truth of our own human experience is always extreme joy, because beyond the human experience we exist. There is no real such thing as death, because the only thing that ever dies is an ego. And once the ego dies, we're back into our truth. However that may appear to us, it's a truth of being pure consciousness and celebrating itself for the sake of itself, as it always does. So if you're feeling drained or disconnected, if there's something negative in your life, the first thing to do, of course, is simply look at those feelings and look where they're coming from in a conscious, truthful way. And they're coming from our choice. They're coming from our choice of, first of all, where we put our attention to, and secondly, how we are taking something from the outside and creating a story about it that's negative and not self-serving at all. And we all live in a world that's entrained for the most part to do just that. So it's easy to fall into it because there's so much information available today that there, for anyone, anywhere in the world, and for the most part it's negative in some way. And so you're constantly being bombarded with the possibility of taking that on and then getting involved in it in an unconscious way. We can see the suffering, we can see the problems, we can see the wars and the injustices and so forth and so on, but in truth, we're at choice to relate to that kind of news in a loving and compassionate way. We can feel compassion for people who are not doing so well, or they're being victims, real victims of life. And we can feel love for ourselves at the same time that we can acknowledge their suffering. We can acknowledge our own suffering that we put on ourselves because of our choices to feel sadness or fear or whatever. And then we can move ourselves out of that by focusing on the positive. And for me, if I find myself getting involved in some story that I got attracted to, and then I found myself reacting to it in some way that's bringing me down, a lot of times I'll just meditate, and then that helps to push it away. But most times I don't have to do that because I recognize it for what it is, and I recognize that in truth, no matter what you see, no matter what information you expose yourself to, really knowing the truth of what you're seeing or the truth of what you're hearing is not happening. You're watching something being presented, and that's all you know. So it's not a reality that you're involved in for the most part, we hope. And so it's not something that you can testify to from your own experience. It's something that you can generate your own experience from. And you're at choice as to what experience that will be. If you're, in the midst of a war and you're, say, in that war as a soldier, well, that can be a very real life experience that many people have at some point in their life. But even there, people are at choice as to how they experience that kind of intense, negative environment where life and death are at play there for real in terms of the human ego, But when the ego dominates your experience, then you're going to have fear, you're going to have doubts, you're going to feel a lot of negativity. When the truth of who you are dominates your experience because you're a dedicated meditator that practices daily on all levels, the physical level, the mental level, and the emotional level, then your experience is going to be generated in a positive way because you have cultivated that strength in yourself. So my final advice for anybody is to meditate, meditate, meditate. Same advice that my teacher gave to me and everybody here at Synchronicity was to just simply meditate. If you practice the meditation, if you practice balance in all your dimensions, you would bring yourself up. It can't fail. It can't not happen that way. But how many people are going to take that route? How many people are even aware of meditation other than a word that they've heard before? So that's it for this live stream this week. I will be back again next week with another live stream. And whoever is watching me right at this moment, I welcome you, and I'm very grateful that you're here, and I hope you're getting something useful out of this and something that will help you generate a positive experience of yourself moment to moment to moment, irregardless of what you're seeing or doing, or irregardless of the weather, irregardless of where you are and what's happening around you. So that's it for today. I bid you adieu until next week when I'll be back again to share another contemplative focus with you.